Hello. It's quite a conference, huh?
It is.
I mean, seeing so many people in one place,
It's a little overwhelming, actually.
it's a little overwhelming. A little more than.
It's like ants on honey. There's a lot of everyone everywhere.
And I feel like pretty much everybody in EdTech is here. So even in that crowd, as you walk around, you just keep running into people, which
Absolutely.
is fascinating. Because every moment I'm like, I'm trying to get to somewhere, and somebody's like, ah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for doing this. I've been looking forward to this. And for everybody, I want to do a quick reintro for Cindy. Cindy is an absolute legend at both eBay as well as in general when it comes to skills-based hiring, because you were, most of Silicon Valley, even most of finance space has by now moved to the skills-based hiring concept. But you were one of the pioneers who said, you know what, let's stop hiring people based on their Ivy League resumes. Let's find out who has the skills and help them get discovered. So maybe we can start there. I'm curious sort of how did that journey start and what led to it being the way eBay recruits early talent?
Thanks, Tigran. So hi, everybody. Cindy Loggins. I like to introduce myself as I'm actually a mom of two awesome little girls. That's my day job. And then I'm a wife to an awesome husband. And then I work at eBay. So that's kind of how I roll. When we look at hiring at eBay, yes, it is the resume. I mean, that's how folks come in the door. But we look at candidates, at least in the early talent or emerging talent field, in a school agnostic approach. So for us, it's about your skills. It doesn't matter where you come from. Yes, we look in the emerging talent field, we do look for students that are coming from four-year accredited universities through this pipeline. We have a lot of other roles that look at candidates in different capacities, but for this pipeline, it is four-year accredited universities. But it doesn't matter what school you go to. So that's where the skills come into. And we use different methodologies to look for different skills for different roles. And for us, it's really important because we don't look at schools to then flip it around and look at skills. So if we are looking for software engineers, we look for core computer science fundamentals. If we are looking for strategy and ops roles, we look for different aspects from that way. And it did shift the paradigm. In my first years at eBay, it was a little bit tough. It's change management in its rare form, right? With our hiring managers to say, no, we are not going to look at XYZ schools only. But it's worked really well for us. It's actually been really fun and interesting to be able to cast our net a lot wider. And we've seen a lot of really fun and interesting students who have been able to prove themselves at our company and thrived and challenged us in really interesting ways.
I still remember in the early days when you were arguing with hiring managers who were saying, but I still want to see the resume. And you were like, you can't. Yeah. You just got to base it on their skills.
And we have different methodologies as well. Mostly on the engineering side, which tends to be the bulk of what we hire. We have, as you are aware, we have different ways in which we do that, where we have different programs in which we hire, where a lot of my team does the sourcing, and we invite hiring managers to come play in our sandbox, for a lack of a better term, and we say, hey, if you want to hire software engineers, this is the way we're doing it, and we source, you come and interview, you just need to bring a partner, you interview, we bring the candidates, and the more times they do it, actually the feedback has been great. Yes, there are some candidates that don't meet their bar, but there are in any type of interviewing. Right. But more times than not, they come back and they say, gosh darn it, Cindy, where the heck did you find these candidates? So the proof is in the pudding. We find great people.
Amazing. Well then, you didn't stop there though, all right? Because it's one thing to find people who already have the skills, but as you and I well know, that a lot of students graduate from four-year programs and they don't actually have the industry relevant skills, the skills that you all are hiring for. So the Pathways program is a way to bridge that gap. And I'd love to have you share a little bit more how it started and how it's been going.
Yeah, one of the challenges that we had seen over the years was, again, on the engineering side, which again tends to be the most of our focus, is the students that we were seeing from quite a bit of the schools weren't having the skills that we needed in the real world, right? So think computer science or computer engineering weren't having those core computer science fundamental skills that we needed for them to hit the ground running. And so rather than fight the fight with the schools, our thought was, where do we meet the students where they are? And that was our pathways. The pathway to eBay, basically, is how we coined it. And so to say, what is it that they were missing, and how do we get them to where we needed to get them? Yes, the internship is part of that, but we needed them to kind of get there before the internship. So Pathways is essentially our early ID program. So we take sophomores the year before they can be eligible for our internships, sophomores, and then we upskill them. So we figure out where they are in terms of their skill sets with computer science fundamentals. And then what we had the unique opportunity to, because we use CodeSignal as our assessment process for our interviewing for our engineering bases, we use them to figure out how do we train them. And so you can talk a little bit about that in a second, but we figured out where the students needed help. And then rather than take up engineering time, because if I were to ask my engineers, can you spend some time with some of our engineers to do that? We utilize a training tool to be able to upskill them. And then once we had some of that, then we use our engineers to do some mock interviewing. Then we brought in some of our leaders to do, what's so great about eBay. So we coupled all of that, and that is what Pathways is. And then at the end of this short virtual program over the summer that runs in line with our regular junior intern program, then whoever completes that program and then meets the bar, the technical bar at the end of that program, gets pipelined into our full-time intern program consideration. So that's sort of that early ID pathway to eBay.
Yeah, and I love the corporate responsibility around this, because I feel like, especially with the rise of AI, so many skills are going to be displaced, new skills are going to be created, and I think both companies and especially educational institutions have a responsibility to say, how do we help people bridge this gap? Because that's very important both at an individual level to help people achieve their potential, but also just globally speaking, right? The more skilled and talented humans we have, the more things we can create, the more problems we can solve, because that's the ultimate bottleneck. How do we get more highly skilled, highly talented humans who've achieved their true potential?
Exactly. It's not only my problem or your problem or anybody in the audience. I think it's our problem, right? I mean, the children are there. The students are there. They are going to be our future. I would like to retire one day. That is my motto. So I need them to be there to take my place, to take your place, right? So, the education system is what it is. They will be, and hopefully they'll continue to educate our children. And so as employers, it's also our responsibility to help meet them where they are. And I feel strongly about that. Now, then again, I don't know how many in the audience are educators from the schools, but my ask also is, continue to partner with companies in your areas, companies like eBay, companies that are also here at this event or that you partner with, corporate sponsors, to say, what tools are you utilizing at your company? What skills are you looking for? Because those are the skills that your students are going to need. And if you are not teaching them, if you are not educating them, you are doing them a disservice.
100%.
And if you are not, then they will fail. Right? We can only do so much as employers to go out and help meet them where they are, but there has to be that partnership. And if we are not helping them get there, they will fail when they get to that point where they are being considered for a job. So again, it is part of our responsibility as employers to get them there. But we can only do so much.
Right.
So you, as a company that has these tools to do that, is one solution. But we all have to do this together.
Absolutely. It's both mindset, initiative, as well as the tools and technologies that are going to make it happen. Now, since this series specifically is about getting more tactical and talking about it so how exactly, instead of, I've heard people complain yesterday that sessions tend to be too high level and we want specifics. So we've got a slide here and I want to give a little bit of context so this slide can be understood. So what CodeSignal does is we are helping companies embrace skills-based hiring by essentially utilizing highly work-relevant skill assessments at the top of the funnel. So instead of looking at someone's resume, you say, here is the skills that we've identified that matter for this job. Show us that you can do it. And if you can, perfect, you move on through the rest of the process. Now, we also do experiential learning, which says, okay, now if you can't do something, how do we help you close that gap? And the best way to learn something is to do it hands-on. So we have this experiential learning platform where students can practice hands-on and do very targeted practice to understand, okay, these are the skills that I need, these are the gaps that I have, and this is how I'm going to go close it. Now, as part of the Pathway program, last year, Cindy and the team implemented, in addition to our skills-based hiring solution, our experiential learning solutions, and these are some of the results that they saw, and I'll let you talk through some of it.
So as part of Pathways, or as part of our engineering interview process, we have them take a assessment at this, to be able to figure out whether or not they meet our technical bar, for lack of a better term. So as part of Pathways, what we did is we had them take that technical bar at the very front, and if they didn't meet the technical bar, they go through what Tigran is talking about, this, what I call, it's called Cosmo.
Yep.
Cosmo Buddy. And so the students that participate in Pathways have this engineering buddy. So it's a curriculum that they go through, and they can take it on their own accord whenever that they want to. And it's a curriculum that they have to go through. And again, it meets you wherever you are. So you start the curriculum, and I'm not an engineer, so it's way smarter than I am, but it meets you where you are. So you do these different tasks, these different problems, it engages with you, it gives you different solutions, and then you pass this one module, and then it'll go into the next module. And we, on the other end, can follow where these students are, and then you complete it. And then we have all these other pieces of our Pathways program that we layer on into that. And then at the very end of the program, we have them take the GCA, so that take the assessment again. And that's what this metric shows, right? 23% more of the students pass the assessment at the very end than those that started it out on the end. And so for us, that's a huge win because, well, two things. First of all, we're doing good for the students, whether or not they choose to interview with us down the road. The goal is that they did. So we pipelined those 23% of students into interviews for this year's consideration into our candidacy as well. So for us, it's a win either way. If I got 10%, that was my goal. If I could have increased it 10%, because part of it is not just if they increased, you also have to have the motivational part. Right? Motivation to complete the assignments, to complete it, but then also motivation selfishly for me to still want to be considered for eBay. And so we coupled it with completing it, make sure that you want to increase your knowledge, increase your aptitude, right, in computer science. So that went up. But then also we coupled it with a day in the life of eBay. They got some leadership exposure. They met with some of our recent grads. They met with my recruiting team as well. And then a good chunk of them got considered for internships this summer as well.
Yeah. And I love that you touched on motivation because I started a company almost 10 years ago, and I've wrestled with the problem of how do you solve the talent problem, right? How do you help the next billion people reach their true potential? And there's so many layers of complexity. One of them is motivation. And people don't think about it enough, but the reason I love that you've championed this idea of skills-based hiring is that is fundamental to motivation. Because if you're talking about any form of alternative education or any form of working on your own skills to get better, if companies don't care, right? If all the companies care about is what degree you got and from which school, it's really, really difficult to find the motivation to go through that process. But then the second portion of it is hands-on makes things more fun. It's kind of boring to sit there and watch a video and after video after video, but when you get hands-on, it actually makes things way, way more fun. And then tutoring and actually helping you get unstuck when you do get stuck is the third massive, massive component, which only became unlocked with AI. Because we've solved the hands-on portion and the skills-based hiring portion 5 years ago, and I was scratching my head thinking, is like, without personalization, without tutoring, we are not going to be able to get there.
Yep.
And as generative AI revolution started, it was like, you know, for 40 years, it's been known as Bloom's two sigma problem, which is that one-on-one tutoring produces 2 standard deviations above educational outcomes versus one-to-many instruction. And it's kind of amazing that 40 years later, we can actually do all of those things in one. So I'm, for one, just extremely excited about the future of skills and future of education.
Yep. And I think a lot of it, and I think you hit on this often in a lot of the things that you talk about, Tigran, but your tools that you're creating aren't meant to replace other aspects of education. They're meant to complement. And I think that's a key aspect in a lot of what you do and a lot of what we're hearing at this conference as well, because I think there's a little bit of a fear aspect, I think, when people talk about AI, and you and I talk about this a lot.
Right.
It's not meant to replace. It's again, I can't stress this enough. It's meant to meet people where they are, right? I don't know how many of you in the room, yes, many of the room have, work with students, but or have children or have nieces or nephews or grandchildren, right? They have an attention span of a fly. At least my children do, right? And so I think, again, the notion of meeting these children, these students where they are is really, really important. And so whether it's a tool, whether it's a teacher, a professor, a counselor, whatever it might be, I really, truly feel the more tools that we can have options for an individual, the better. The more learning styles that we can have available for a student, the better.
Yep.
Because who are we to say that one learning style is best for an individual, right? And so, and that's what I do love about CodeSignal and Cosmo is you can do it on your own time. You can do it any way that you want.
Yep.
And you can get Cosmo. And again, a reminder, I am not the engineer, but I do love this because you can, the AI behind it, you can get really confused and tell darn Cosmo to be like, I don't get it.
Yep.
I just don't
Cosmo
get it.
doesn't judge.
Cosmo does not judge Cindy. And I really love that because on a really bad day, it gets really hard. But he doesn't, right? And you can iterate on that and, they can do it with a bunch of different roles. And anyway, I can go down a rabbit hole with that. But
yeah.
I think it's really important for us to think about that. And again, I go back to how do we build things to meet the students where they are, because they need to be the future, period, full stop.
All right. I love it. That's a beautiful note to end it on, and 20 minutes goes by fast.
Yes.
Everybody, thank you for being here. Please give a big round of applause to Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you, Tigran.
Thank you. And if you want to connect with either one of us, you can find our LinkedIn on the slide. Thank you all.